Thank you guys for coming out. We're going to get ready to get started on our fourth PCC meeting since we got back into a rhythm. And this is the second one for this year. I would like to apologize for any of those of you who are out there who came out last week for the June. It was originally scheduled for June 13th. And we had to postpone it due to unforeseen circumstances that were out of my control. We took measures to send out robocalls and just to let everyone, but it was really last minute to let everyone know that that meeting was canceled and it would be postponed. So if you were one of the ones who came out last week, I do apologize that you were inconvenienced. I reached out to Mr. Fisher and he has provided me with some papers to show you how to go on and make sure that you're registered to receive the robocalls, the emails, the text messages. So in the event something like that happens again, you would have notice and not come out here. So again, I want to thank you guys for coming out, and we're going to have our opening remarks for our director, Todd Warren.
Good evening. Thank you for coming out. I want to begin by thanking all of you who gave my family love and support for the loss of my father. We buried him in Virginia last week. His funeral was on 10 at St. Matthew's Church. It was rough, but your love and support, the love and support of the men and women of the Orange Police Department, the city council, the entire city of Orange Township, really helped during a very difficult time. It's something you have to go through in order to understand, but you know, with your support and your love and God's help, we are making it through. But I want to thank you for coming out, and thank you for your continued support. And all the ideas that you may have, we would like you to share them with us, because this is a community effort. And our success is based upon action according to a well-thought-out plan. It's our plan. If you have ideas, give them to us, and we will try and figure out how to implement these plans, how to execute. And it will make the city safer. It will make the city better. It's our job to serve you. We're here to serve you and protect you. So whatever input you have, whatever information, whatever resources you may know that we can tap into, please feel free to let us know. We're here for you. We appreciate your support. And I want to thank the men and women of the Orange Police Department for their ongoing service. Chief Vidiello, Captain Dunn, and the entire command staff. We're here working tirelessly on behalf of the citizens of this great city. So I want to thank you guys for coming out, and we're here for you. Thank you.
Welcome, everybody. It's good to see everyone's face. You know, time and time again, every other week, come on, city council meeting. You guys go on meetings, city, I'm all there. So there's a lot of complaints from the citizens. I'm gonna go over meeting, letting them know that we have this police committee council. And to come here, we discuss what's going on in the community. But I don't know why. A lot of the people that have a lot to say don't show up. So if we get the word out, please get it out, because you guys will know, right? Pretty well, a little rough around the edges, but I will give you 1,000%. And I always get back to you, or try to rectify your problems. And, you know, we want to make everyone happy. We want everyone to feel safe in the city of Orange. Like the director said, well, family, this is a family from the director to the mayor, to the council, the police department, the fire, to the city. We're all one big family. We're all supposed to adapt to each other. So please get the word out some more. Let's have some more participation, because this is a great day. And we love having this. And thanks again, Captain Cummings, and all she does, and all the cops here. You know, they do an outstanding job. And I have to say, we have such a wonderful police department. We have such a well-rounded group of officers, empathy, compassion, and you know what? You don't find it in every place you go. And just the other day, I got a phone call from one of the council women. So I called the manager here. Usually there's complaints. Ever since been, it's got a kind of quiet now. So two of you officers, this elderly man who may have had mental health issues, and she was so impressed by the way our officers handled the shit. And you know what? That's not an abnormal case. That's the norm for our police department. And that's honesty. Officer Mendez can tell you, you're part of the RIDE program. Now, I'm old, I forget the acronym, you know what a RIDE means? Critical Incident Training. What it does is that, in partnership, it's a pilot program, Attorney General and each arm, where we have a trained officer in CIT, along with a health practitioner, mental health practitioner. They ride, park them all day, and we answer calls for motion to serve parking and homeless, and anybody who needs assistance. It's a great program. Director Warren is huge into the mental health. He has several programs that are, coming up soon. So, there's a lot of things we're doing in this, in the city, this community, but hopefully we'll get every one of our cops trained to CIP. It's a wonderful thing. But that's all I have to say. Proud of the department, proud of the city, proud of everybody. Love where you guys know that. Whatever you need, we're always here. So enjoy your presentation and thank you all for coming. Thank you.
To being there, trying to counsel you.
Yeah.
Are they currently in person or are they still?
Yes.
Are they planning, when are they planning to meet personally?
I don't know, I think, they were discussing it maybe by September. God, anybody, but anybody, I don't know where they're doing it, but it is on Zoom, so,
That's what I was afraid of, getting that time.
well, as you already heard.
So, no, that's not the communication. That's what I know we do.
Yes.
In terms of, I don't know, because it's in person, they build to be responsible, some of them. But it's the handicap for those of us who are residents in terms of communication.
Well, I'm with you.
Saying somebody goes to the plan,
Yes.
and we don't even know.
No, not, unless you go on Zoom, but, no, I'll bring that up to, recognize, bring it up to the administrator, to see when that. Yeah, I hope so.
They have the organization in July first, isn't it?
Yes.
Maybe that was for something changing, on.
Yeah, no, yeah, we'll bring it up again, and remember first, moderation, get that.
And will that be on Zoom too?
And go.
Be at the middle school.
Yeah, so if you will be there.
In the middle school.
Yes.
Okay.
I just want to add one thing real quick. Chief Leo spoke about some of the things that we're doing. We are the only police department in this region that has a re-entry initiative, both for returning home from incarceration. If we do not have a component in place to assist with a successful transition back into society, as police would have it, they're gonna do the same thing. But we are the only department that has it. You will see the New Jersey league grant, $250,000. And thus far, we have serviced 78 folks that have returned home, and we have another 20 some odd people on deck. We have employment, housing, mental health, assistance. We have people that are working. They're back on payroll. We're helping them get their dignity and their pride, their respect, their self-respect back. But no one wants to pay attention to that. Reentry, the recidivist rate will decrease. We use that as a crime prevention tool. So we have many women who are returning home from incarceration, and we are assisting them and obtaining employment. If there's a housing issue, we have stakeholders in place for that. Mental health, the mental health service, we have a stakeholder in place for that as well. It's an evolving initiative, but it's working. We're proud of it. And a lot of folks don't really understand the importance of reentry until they get robbed or something happens, something egregious takes place. But that's one of the things that we are doing, and we're proud of that initiative. And it's working. Again, we have a reentry coordinator who goes out to the prisons and visits. So anyone from Orange, let's say, goes to state prison, we have a conference with them. We give them information a month prior to being released. So we can have a chance to build a rapport, find out where you're gonna live, who you're gonna live with, what are your needs, what are your strengths and weaknesses. So, like, again, it's an evolving program, but it works, and we believe in it, and it's better than doing nothing. For those who want to complain, it's better than doing nothing, it's more than what we have to do. So we're servicing 78 so far, and we have 20 more on deck, and we're going to continue to grow this program and improve it. So I just want you to know that, and I'll keep you posted on all our progress. Right. The Thunder Police Department, I could not find office space outside the police department because sometimes they don't want to return here. But they come back here, they come here to meet with us and get the information, so it's working. Yes.
Somehow, I think we probably.
That'll be a part of Dress for Success. So what we'll do is, I'm gonna have the coordinating business cards passed around next time or before the next meeting. So now we can sit and close in, and we'll have a place to store them. And when you come home from prison, we can tell what size you might be, what you have clothing for interviews. And we want to get the program to the point where we're interviewing, teach them interview skills, resume writing. Well, that's what it's, yeah. So we're gonna need that. Yeah. But we have to understand, we're all bringing different gifts to the table. Yes, women, yes, men and women, yes. But this is just an example. We bring all our gifts together, at the table, have our success, and we do. So yes, we're gonna definitely follow up on that. Definitely. Great.
Also, this team, leaders, like, they all becoming social skills. You'd be surprised at how many people, you don't understand it in the world.
Social skills, and yes. That's very important. Because you're gonna learn social skills and what to do, what not to do, not just at the table, but when you do, when you're private interview. Yeah. And that's what I mean by evolving. There are components that we want to add to it, to make it even greater, and community things, all of us. Yeah. Well, you know what, we need that, honestly. Because we're servicing folks in Orange, but there are folks in East Orange and Irving that are being serviced also. Because I don't like to turn people away. We have residents of Orange, I'm from another city, we got new jobs to work in public works. So the objective is to establish a regional reentry initiative where we're Orange, Irving, and East Orange, both of the different animal, it has its own everything. So Orange, Irving, and East Orange, you know, if we can all work together, because crime has no border. If you look at it, some of the people that commit crimes in Orange, you say in East Orange, or Irving. So it's a way of us trying to something. You know, it's not gonna be like this panacea where, you know, we're in an established position, broken society, but it beats doing nothing. And if we come together as a community and do what you said, you know, volunteer, everyone's bringing their gifts to the table. So that's the objective. So I would like to have a follow-up with you guys. And it's what I meant earlier about sharing ideas, because you brought something to the table that I didn't think of. So I would love to meet you guys. We'll change information because this program can and will evolve with your input. Yes. Mhm. Yeah, we have a license clinician on board. We have a licensed clinician. Yes, we have a licensed clinician. We have a job specialist, an employment specialist. We have different stakeholders in place, but there are also things that we may not have, but we'll get there.
So we're gonna have Lieutenant Hector Rosado and Officer Honesty Mendez come and do their presentation. Do you guys need the mic? You need the mic? Okay. Just in case, just in case.
Good evening, good evening. My name is Lieutenant Hector Rosado. I've been a member of this agency for about 20 years from this month. Originally born in this city, however, I was raised in North, lived in there until I was blessed the opportunity from the city of Orange Township to hire me as an officer, and I never looked back. I just kept going and giving my all. Today I'm joined by Officer Honesty Mendez, been in this department since 2021, post-COVID, so we still live nonsense in COVID, right? She's actually one of my officers on my shift. I currently work the morning shift, and I can't speak highly enough about her. She provides everything we can, and she's also a lifelong resident of this town. She was raised in this town. I remember honestly when she was a little bitty child, and to see her grow up to a beautiful officer and a wonderful person and that can give back to the community in this aspect, I can't speak highly enough about it. I'd like to start with, we're gonna speak on behalf of the patrol division. We're gonna provide certain aspects into how we assess and respond to, incidents throughout the city and what we can provide to the residents of the city. So. So the first thing you see is the map of the city. And it's broken down into certain zones and sectors. And as you can see, the north part of the city is zone 1. Center part of the city is zone 2, and the south end is zone 3. But you can see you have the north end, in yellow. The pink area is predominantly Main Street, but that's as far as the Main Street streets that border along Main Street. The gap in between is 280. You have the central section of Orange. You have Seven Oaks area, which is the lower south end, eastern south end, as well as, and then you have the Scotland and Lincoln area, and then you have the corner of the valley past the train trestles. Every zone has 2 officers per zone. Every sector is broken out to 6 sectors. That's how our city is broken down from a patrol aspect. Now again, that doesn't mean that there aren't other officers in the area, whether working for another division, or at minimum, we are required to have 6 officers on the road at all times. And that's how we break it down per zone, per sector. And we have, if there's a call for service, depending on the severity or the priority calls, if they're emergency calls, usually there'll be another officer that'll join them, and that'll require certain officers, usually it'll be from officers within the same zone or in the vicinity. So in aspects, if you have an officer in the north end patrolling, let's say there's on Bradford, which is in the north end, right? And you have an officer somewhere near Main Street on the lower end, but there's an officer nearby at Main and High or Main and Scotland. Chances are they'll pull an officer from zone 2 to go assist that officer on the top end, so you don't have to have this officer navigate through traffic, so it doesn't create emergency issues, whether cars have to go lights and sirens, and sometimes it creates a little hazard for the common public as well as the officers who don't, as they're traveling to the call, they're responding with as needed, as much necessary equipment that they can utilize. But as you know, some people sometimes don't see the lights during the day. Sometimes they don't hear the sirens and not paying attention. And that kind of causes some confusion. So we're trying to limit as much travel distance for the officers to remove that danger from not only the public as well as officers responding to the calls. Next. Here we have some pictures regarding some community events that we host. I want to say about 98, probably 99% of the officers that enter this agency start their careers off in patrol division. This is the heartbeat of the entire city when it comes to policing. We provide as much as we can in all the other divisions. Listen, everybody would want as many officers as they can to provide services as they can, but sometimes they're not met with that. So what they do is they'll ask us to assist as we can. And as you can see, you have officers being sworn into the union. You have officers at a community fair, which you know the director was talking about before. You have your SRT, which is Special Response Team, and I'll explain a little bit more on that. And then you have the toy giveaways that we do every year, and it's when all the divisions in this agency combines itself and it utilizes as many officers as it can. Because if there's one thing I can say about patrol is we're usually the first people that the citizens see in the time of need. It's not EMS, it's not fire, nothing against them. It's usually a police officer. The irony is, somebody always asks, why do you become a fireman? And I said, I don't want to run into the fire, burning buildings. Guess what? Within my first year, I probably ran into 3. And I was there before, yeah. And that's usually the case. You do what you can to provide help to the citizens as needed, because unfortunately, that's what we're here for. And some people, either they're disabled or whatever, for whatever reason, task is on us. There's, and whether the officer is strong enough or doesn't quick enough, we do as much as we can, and we give our all to make sure that we can complete the job that's asked of us. So here we have the calls of service. That can get a little convoluted, but as you can see, these are predominantly all the calls that we respond to from a patrol aspect. Starting with the 911 hang. You call 911 from your home, it registers in our system. We'll give you a call back. I would say 10 out of 10 times, we're still sending an officer to your home. That's why you say, oh no, my nephew or my grandson or my granddaughter, my niece was playing on the phone. We're still sending, but we want to know what we can gather, what type of information we gather on that phone. And sometimes it's a 911 hang up and the person's actually needing assistance of any kind, whether it's EMS, a medical call, or some type of fire. And frantically, oh, I called the police. But you didn't tell them nothing, you hung up the phone. So without that information, officers are responding blind. So we can start with that. We can talk all day. Unfortunate enough, we haven't had any recent issues. Active shooters kind of situate itself. You have anything from an aggravated assault to stolen motor vehicles to threatening reports. You have motor vehicle accidents, which we'll go into the next slide soon. That's predominantly what our calls for service end up being. You have your DUIs, which is driving under the influence of alcoholic beverages or any type of influence of a narcotic. You have your blocked driveways. In the morning, people wake up in the morning, somebody couldn't find parking, guess what? They blocked someone's driveway. Right? And if you ever had a driveway blocked, you know how frustrating that is. Now we got to get the officer out there as quick as we can. There's, Mrs. Smith or Mr. Jones has to go to work. Well, they have to go wherever. And we're going to wind up throwing that car. And that's just by all means. You know that driveway is not to be blocked and they're impeding someone else's right foot. You have your thefts, the simple assaults, sudden deaths, which, believe it or not, require a lot of time. Unfortunately, when people pass on to the next life, it requires an officer to respond, and they have to remain there as long as the medical examiner's office requires us to be there. We have to document it, we have to fill out a separate report from a regular incident report. We have to file it with the, Essex County Prosecutor's Office. They investigate, those incidents. And if there's any type of foul play, something that we, most of the time will require DP just to take a look to make sure that everything's in order. And if it appears to be of natural causes, then we'll pass it on to the medical examiners. But the officer's gonna remain there. It could be between 2 hours, it could be 7 hours, it could be 8 hours. Sometimes you have people in the city who don't have families that live nearby, and we have to make arrangements to try to reach them, to try to contact them, and that's one of the hardest part of this job, you know? Telling someone that they lost a family member is very difficult in this junction, but it does come with the territory. Continue. Now, this graph coming up, as we see Monty Irvin in the background, God bless him, Susan. What you see in red, it says just about 73% of our calls to service are direct control. Now, what is direct control? It's exactly what the statement says. It's a patrol that's directed in a specific area. If you call us and tell us, hey, there's this new vehicle that keeps speeding up my street, and I'm afraid it's gonna crash into someone someday. So we try to gather the hours most of the time, but even then, what we'll do is, as a response, we'll do direct patrols to try to either deter or capture the person or address the issue at hand. If this blue car comes speeding up down the street, we have an officer there waiting for it in inconspicuous ways. Just like when there's crimes of violence and you have your reaching rash spurs of violence or any type of burglaries, as they pop up, we'll assign certain officers to the area and we'll have them patrol in a direction. That's exactly what it is, directed patrol. We'll have them control specifically that area, not only that officer, but we'll sometimes send other officers from other zones just to change the eyesight. See what they see, document what they see. We have issues with homes that seem dilapidated or abandoned of some sort, and the city hasn't noticed it. Guess what? We'll do a quality of life report. We'll submit it to the Service Bureau. They'll speak to code enforcement. They'll address it as needed. They'll either contact the homeowner or the property owner of some sort, and they'll do what they can. And that's usually what winds up happening with direct patrols. You'll see as they become more frequent in that specific area, what happens is you won't see that blue car speeding up in that same street. They might pick another street, but we'll address it, we'll catch on to it, and eventually the car be in the tow yard. But we do exactly what we need to do at every juncture in these direct patrols so that we can make sure that citizens have a sense of safety at each time. So if you see an officer in the area with the lights on, doesn't necessarily mean that anything emergency is happening at the moment, but if they're parked and they're outside walking the vehicle or walking around the vehicle or driving around the area, you see them drive around the time, sometimes they're just letting you know that they're there. That's part of what we do. We want you to understand that we want you to feel as safe as you can, and it's our job to do that. You can skip the next one. You can skip the next one. Actually, go back. Now, this is a very, very fine-tuned, broken down by each percentage of each type of call that we received from January of this year to June, to the beginning of June. And what you see in purple is 20% of our calls for service are motor vehicle accidents. Now, if you don't realize, this is without 280. Now, that stretch of 280 can get a little busy, as you know, but what you do have is people that enter a freeway drive to escape some of that traffic and congestion. And sometimes when they're coming off the ramps, they're not necessarily conscious of either pedestrians or vehicles in the area. So we try to address them as we can, whether it's setting up radar or setting up traffic details. But what you have is people that are coming through the city and navigating through the city and just trying to get through it as fast as they can. What happens with speed, you get careless, and that's what requires it. And it's not something that it's motor vehicle accidents, it's a potluck situation. Sometimes you're gonna get no injuries, sometimes you're gonna get 4. And, you know, that requires a drain on the services when it comes to EMS, fire, tow trucks. You have to block roads off, you have to require other officers to respond to the area to make sure that there's no other hazards that occurred. We have to make sure that the traffic backup from that accident, from that road closure, is accessible from other streets down the line. And because Freeway Drive runs right through our Main Street area of the city, usually that's what you'll see. You'll see the congestion build up on Main Street directly. As soon as an accident happens somewhere near Freeway Drive, it's gonna affect Main Street, no matter how you look at it. But that's the majority of our reports that get reported throughout the city. You have some of the vehicles, some of the blues down here. You have your hit and runs, which is also a motor vehicle accident. When people don't want to report them, you know, they just want to skip and leave. Well, leave it up to the detectives and they track them down, do what they got to do. And then you have your vehicle thefts. Believe it or not, people still leave their cars unlocked. And as technology has advanced with vehicles in today's world, with chips and keys and all of that, people still are, technology in the theft world, they're trying to get the car by any means. They want the car, they're gonna try it. If you leave it unlocked, you're inviting criminals. You know, you have people that just walk by, they're just pulling on doors just to see if they can get in the car, or they'll take your change and sit in the cup holder. And that's probably not something that they would normally do, but just by any chance, oh, the door's open. And that invitation creates something of note that we wind up having to deal with over time. Call volume. This goes back to what I was saying before. As you can see, the purple, it has the highest reach. In 6 months, we had 300 plus accident reports. And that directly affects your car insurances, and they be by region, so it affects the county, and so on and so forth. So it's not what Orange does, something that East Orange has to handle, something that Irvington has to deal with, something that North has to deal with. And the more congestion of vehicles, the higher the rates go. And unfortunately, that's the strain that comes with inflated rates. That's why you feel the effects of raising rates, because accidents. People need more defensive driving training or some sort that they can do what they can. The red to the left, that's arrest. We had just under 100 arrests for the year, and that could be for anything from domestic violence incident, a weapons offense, or any type of narcotics arrest, or any type of open warrants that they have, bench warrants, as well as warrants that were placed for other crimes that they haven't attested, they haven't answered for or been arraigned in. As you can see, this green, I'm gonna point at it because there's a few here. Maybe difficult to see, but you can see how many blocked driveways we have. That's actually a big part of a daily response when it comes to the day officers patrol. We wind up having to address a lot of those per day. So if you can, believe it or not, I don't know if you know this, you shouldn't block your whole driveway, because you might have the neighbor call the cops on you. And what we'll do is, we'll check the plate to make sure that if it's a resident, we'll go knock on the door. Hey, just, you know, be mindful if someone calls the police. But that's the first thing we do. Try to find out who owns the car so we get the car moved. Because it's not about addressing it by issuing a summons or towing the vehicle. It's about trying to locate the owner so we can get the access back to the property. Because that's what's most important. Continue. These are breakdowns of the calls per week. It's fairly consistent, believe it or not. But your Tuesdays and your Fridays and your Wednesdays seem to be the highest spiking calls. But believe it or not, as you look across the board, step back, it's fairly consistent. Not everyone says, oh, they don't want to do, it might be a different type of call, but Sunday to Saturday, you're gonna get the same type of calls every day. And a lot of people don't realize that, but when you've been here for 20 years, or some officers and some supervisors and captains been here for 30, listen, they know exactly what it means. It don't matter what day you work. Whatever you saw on a Friday, you're gonna see on a Tuesday. Whatever you saw on a Sunday, you're probably gonna see on a Thursday. It just, there's no rhyme or reason when it comes to that. You know, a lot of people think the weekends are the busiest. It just changes the type of calls. Usually you'll get a lot of, loud parties that we gotta go shut down and issue summonses, or you'll get, some issues with, taverns where they're letting out, so it's causing traffic congestion, or some type of incidents involving, disputes over the bill. So that's just it, you know, just as you know, taverns and restaurants, they attract most of their business on the weekends, you know? And, this is a breakdown of the calls as the time of day. Again, the peaks and valleys that you see is pretty much spot on with people waking up and going to sleep, waking up and going to sleep. People who work at night, they're asleep during the day, right? But people, and as you see, as it start getting from 12 midnight, you start getting to 6 in the morning or whatnot, you start seeing the difference in the call volumes. And you start seeing the amount of calls that we get per day. There's peaks and valleys in that. Every shift has some form of a downtime, but it doesn't mean that's gonna last the same amount of time. There might be 20 minutes where you're working a midnight shift, you might get 20 minutes of no calls at all. But then you might get 9 in one shot. And unfortunately, that's exactly what happened. You know, same thing with the day shift. There'll be officers walking in, starting their shift at 6 a.m. and there is no roll call. We gotta go out there. We got 3 accidents, people coming over. If 280's doing that, any type of, construction, forget about it. We're gonna send officers just to deter the traffic, because people will be cutting through and they don't know the city. They'll get lost, or other constructions that take place. So that's pretty much what that is. And, I'll open the floor up, believe it or not, when it comes up to patrol aspect. The first and foremost, what we try to do is address things by traffic stops and visible violations. Now, if you, again, I've been here 20 years. I've experienced with, I've been a detective. I've been an investigator with Homeland Security. I was on loan during this time. I've been a gang investigator. I've been vehicle interdiction with vehicles that's getting more into vehicles bringing in high quantities of either finances, currency, or drugs throughout the state. I've done a lot in this agency, in pretty much just about everything that I could ask for. And I'm gonna speak from a traffic stop aspect. The majority of criminal entities use vehicles for everything they do. And what that means is, no one's gonna walk, if there's and it's not the alarm anymore, but no one's gonna walk from one city to the next city with any type of narcotics or weapons or whatnot. 99% of the time, they're gonna put it in the car to make sure it gets to their location where they want it to leave the city or enter the city. And traffic stops are usually whether, let's say somebody's wanted for an assault warrant. They're not gonna be just walking about. They know we know their names. They know we know who they are. So if we get a be on the lookout advisory for someone who's wanted for a warrant, they're not gonna be walking just on Main Street or Central Avenue or South Road. They're gonna be in the car. So that's the importance of traffic stops. You know, traffic stops, it's not about getting tickets, it's not what it is. It's you see a violation, it's visible, you address it as needed. Majority of the time, we're out for trying to give people breaks, well, they don't give, some type of, hazardous condition. Sometimes we can't, sometimes we have to address it. If you're either speeding or you're taking turns and disregarding pedestrian traffic. But when these traffic stops occur, it's not only about the driver, it's about everyone else in the car. It's about where the vehicle is wanted, is the vehicle stolen, is the vehicle being used for something else? And, that's what it comes down to, because, and then you have your overnight permanent parking and your alternate side parking, and then we try to address Main Street. So again, from a patrol standpoint, we're not only answering calls as we're being called to go, we're trying to address these things on our downtime. When our downtime still requires some type of response, majority to these issues. So you have, people who pay for parking permits at Tony Lentil Plaza, and they catch commuters, or catch the train, whether to New York or whatnot. And what you have is, in the morning, right before, you have to make sure that you address it to people that do have permits to park there, can park. But then, while the officer's out there addressing it, whether, just, make sure they'll park there or issuing the summons, he's getting called to respond somewhere else. He has to stop doing what he's doing, he has to go somewhere else. And again, this happens many occasions, so if you live on a street that has permit parking, or there's a car blocking the fire hydrant, you call us to address it. Listen, the officer's gonna go address it, but that doesn't mean that they're gonna be able to situate it while they're there. Sometimes they gotta get up and go, because unfortunately, we have to respond as much as we can, because it comes to priority level of calls, whether it becomes an emergency, and again, from a safety hazards. And I'd like to thank you at this time for allowing me to speak on behalf of the Control Division. The floor is open for any questions or any concerns for James. Let's start from the left over. Go ahead.
Two things.
Go ahead.
This is the time now. Why?
Is it?
Yes.
It's 2.2, it's 2.2 square miles with 280. There's about 1.8. Nah, that's kind of aggressive, but guess what? We still got it.
Anyway, what about the Reynolds cameras around the city? How many?
Surveillance cameras?
And you don't have anything, fix up Brentwood and stuff?
That's still being, we have a lot.
You do?
I can't speak to that. I could, probably allow, Dr. Reed on the camera. 197. Currently actively working.
Okay.
And that's throughout the entire.
Okay, one more thing.
Okay.
I have my stepfather who's passed away.
God bless you.
Years ago. His gun is in my car, all rusted over. Who are getting?
You give it to, anyone, actually, Officer Adams, he'll go to the judge right now. Yep.
Okay. Yeah, it's out.
She back heat, see? People carry guns in cars. People carry guns in cars.
It's gonna be a mandatory.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
It's a question, well, it's good to have representatives from the patrol division as well as the investigative bureau. I kind of think certain trends are exclusive to, like, the whole state, and right now, I think stolen cars is an epidemic all over. So as a representative from the patrol division and a representative of the investigative bureau, are you seeing any things that, like, that people should know, tips to go? Because I know, like, certain things I go home and my wife doesn't want to hear about, like, things at work and go, that. But one thing I always want to talk about is like taking the key fob out, locking door positions. I think some trends in law enforcement and the state, for that matter, it's exclusive to the entire state what's going on right now. And prevention is obviously a big thing, but some of these bandits are getting very, very brazen.
Very
It's a
brazen.
real high-end thing. So my question is there anything you're seeing in the reports we're taking and our follow-ups that can be helpful to everyone.
So what I can add to that is, and this is something that's been growing, probably from the since that people have been turning over to push button and key fobs and whatnot, because what happens is, you used to be able to steal a car with whatever they had, a hammer, a screwdriver, or a pulley, whatever. Now they need to keep. How do you get that key? And they're trying to not be as violent as they can, because if they want the car, they're going to try everything they can to get the car. Now, that's either carjacking someone or getting that key. It's easier for them, when I say them, meaning the thieves, and these criminal rings, to acquire the key faster. But what you have to do is, and to touch on what Captain Williams touching on, key fobs. Do not leave spare keys, any type of key fobs, any type of loose keys, vehicles just laying about the house. Do not. Don't just put them on your dresser. Don't put them near the door. Don't put them near the window. Don't hang them up right next to the front door. I know that's what we're accustomed to. I'm telling you, if you have especially high-end vehicles, whether it's Mercedes-Benz, BMWs, Rolls Royce, whatever, listen, whatever vehicle you have, if it's rare or it's not something that is the norm, they're going to try to get it. And unfortunately, what you have is, they will follow you. If you went to a restaurant right now in the middle of New York City, someone will, if they want your car, someone will follow you from New York City. You wouldn't know it, because you wouldn't suspect it. And there's ways that they do it. They're contacting somebody over here, hey, find out she's coming, he or she is coming over the bridge, coming over the tunnel, pick them up on this highway. They're very sophisticated when it comes to that. And the only way I can say that you deter that is, don't leave the keys just hanging around, especially not in the village. And if you have the keys close enough, to the windows and access points to your house, there's actually devices that they can tap into right next to your car. Certain cars have that capability, and they'll hack into your computer system of the car, and they'll turn it on and they'll drive away without. But that's a more sophisticated method. We haven't seen that as the norm, but it does occur, and it can occur. So you want to try to address that by finding ways of either putting the keys either in the closet, like that's, I always say the closets are a great point, because no one, you have criminals that will enter your home, whether you're home or not, while you're sleeping. They'll try to enter your home if they want the phone. And if it's brazen enough, they'll get the key by any means. Problem there is the key's right laying on the desk. They're just going in, oh, you know what, we got the key to your house. They're going in, they look around, look at the wall, look at this, they don't see the key, they're out, they're going to the next one. You already deterred it, like, you know what, we can't find it through the last time we went there trying to get the car. There's no point in going back. I like to say use the closet, believe it or not, because, or even like certain cabinets, no one's looking in a cup cabinet for keys. No one's looking, they're looking at drawers, no one's looking up. You know, no one's looking above the refrigerator drawer or the cabinets above the refrigerator or the cereal boxes next to a set of keys. No one's gonna look at it. Everyone's looking down below because it's stick and move. They're trying to get in and out. They don't want to harm you, but unfortunately, they still intruded your home, and you feel obviously it's a dangerous situation. And it will happen while you're asleep, unfortunately, and when that draws the attention of the community, it rises up, you know, people's awareness. So it's good to be aware of that. Okay,
Officer Ontario and.
Rosado,
Rosario.
Rosado, hit in Spanish.
Okay, Rosario. Thank you both for being here, first of all.
Appreciate it.
I'd like to go back to one of the previous range you showed us. I was in my current home 48 years.
Mhm.
And one of the grades you showed us showed the city line being broken down into sections. And you identified that there are officers, at least two, the sign, you said.
To each zone, yes.
I
That's-
have
she's
not
talking about the-
seen anyone in my area for a long, long time relevant to who is assigned. There used to be a walk and talk,
A walk and talk?
walk and talk,
Okay.
where the officer who was assigned to the area would come and literally ring our doorbell to meet us so that we could in turn that person. They would know us, we live, those of us who live in that area, and we would know that individual person. Just for me, Officer Lane
Okay.
was assigned to our area.
He's currently my sergeant, okay.
Okay. Well, he can verify what I said.
He's a great man.
He would come and bring it back. Just to say hello. And to say, officer, or if you need anything, you want to share, whatever. So therefore, when he saw me, he knew that I belonged there. And I knew that he belonged in that area just to, know us and have that kind of camaraderie. I haven't seen that in a long, long time. So my question is, you have indicated that there are officers assigned to our area. However, I cannot see them.
Okay, so to answer your question properly, I'd like to say, and I'm glad you brought that up. That's one of my biggest pet peeves. When I started my career here, I walked for 2.5 years. When I say why I walked, not a walking talk, it's a walking talk. I walked the projects, I walked Main Street, I walked the senior building, they needed me there, I was walking folks. We didn't have a vehicle, we didn't have that. A little bit antiquated method, because unfortunately what they saw was when officers needed assistance nearby, I'm jumping on the bus just to get there. And I don't have any access. And then, we put me on the bike, and then when I was on the bike, then they put me in the car and then dress it. But I like that you brought that up. What you have is, there's an adjustment period that takes place. Because what you have is, it also comes with newer generation. The newer generation, they don't, and God bless Ms. Small, she knows how she taught. They don't teach from a basic standpoint. Their basics are more interactive, electronic. Most people of today, and the newer generations, I would say, they're communicating via text rather than handwriting or even speaking to someone. Like I have nieces and nephews who play a video game online. When I had to play with someone, they had to sit right next to me playing a video game. And guess what? People are more comfortable, and I'm not saying people, I'm saying in general, the newer generation is much more comfortable playing a video game with someone who's not in their own home. They're playing electronically, whether it's Wi-Fi, on the internet, and stuff, and things of that nature. And what you have is an adjustment. We have to now take care of the issues that occurred when they were students. Because when they were students in class, they were taught to communicate electronically. So now we have to bring their voice out. You have officers that have beautiful voices and they speak well, but they just not comfortable. They're a little shy. They're a little shy unless, and this is one thing that they're taught in the academy, unless they're called to do their job. So it's not like, it doesn't mean that they don't want to talk to you or knock on doors. They think that they're invading your privacy. And also there's a big gap in that, not only with the color legalities, you have, and like you said, Officer Lane, now he's a sergeant, he knows what belongs in there. Something that I can say that I've done personally with my shift, and Officer Mendes can attest to this, I give them homework. I have them go and speak to not only the owners of the grocery stores and supermarkets, I have them speak to the businesses, and I mandate them to give me 2 people you met today, give me their contact and their info, and let me know what you want from them. Because what you have there is it builds up not only rapport, as you said, what Officer Lane did, it also builds familiarity and comfort. Because now they have, I'm sorry, what's your last name?
Johnson.
They have Mrs. Johnson's last, they have her address, they know where she resides, they know what car she drives. By all means, it's documented, right in the notepad, and if they're usually driving the same sector, the same area, so they know exactly who to speak to if something happens. Ms. Johnson, are you okay? Did you hear something in the area? Did you see, a deer? We're looking for a deer. Did you have things on? Yeah, you got things that happen. But that's the irony of it. You have things that happen. Exactly. But what you have there is you gotta, allow for the time constraints that occur when officers, they get out of the academy, they're taught a certain way. And one thing that hasn't really been addressed is how they were taught in school. And when it comes to elementary or even in college, and even in high school, these things are shown today. Like there's now schools are going back to penmanship. I'm telling my age now, you know what I mean? And like I said, the small, she was my eighth grade teacher. Nah, listen, she taught me better than that. But she taught me one thing to make sure my voice is heard, make sure that people understand what we said and we mean. And, it goes right back to what I'm saying. You have to allow the gap in the generations to blend a little bit more, because this is a young age. Going back in 2011 and 2010, we had a lot of officers, laid off for whatever reason on the prior administration. And it took us some time to gain that staffing back. Took us almost about 8 years to just reach the previous level. And then from 8 years, that standpoint, now you have the other 4 years, now that, Mayor Warren's been in administration for 12 years. That other 4 years took place. Now he's doing the surplus and providing the exact response that you need from a police agency on your behalf. It just has to blend a little bit. And it's becoming that. We're going back to that. Now, maybe they haven't spoken to you, but it's getting more to it. And I'll jump on it as much as I can.
Yeah, well, that, in my observation, but from that, we can move to being in fault and park. And just park. Not to get out, not to walk, right? We also had a four-way stop sign that was put in.
Which one is this?
Berkeley and Hingham.
Okay. I remember when it wasn't, okay?
But what I'm saying is, then we no longer saw that in that sense. Involved. I don't see anyone on my end, see, on your end.
I've only seen the guy on one with one of the points in the park.
Excuse me, I'm gonna say I have to interrupt this, brief second. Tina Gonzalez will be around to continue to answer questions, but we have one more presentation for tonight, a special guest.
Sorry.
And so we can go.
We have to, all the amendments.
No, no.
I guess something, just something. The other feeling, and I'm just wondering, because, you hear about the federal help, right? Did you get any federal help?
That's dependent on, relationships within the department and throughout the state. It depends on exactly what the data stuff. That's way above my favorite.
Yeah, we have a grant writing team and it depends on whatever they allow to get. At this time, I want everybody to just say thank you to Mendez. When I asked for someone to come out, he said he didn't have to get ready because he stayed ready. So we thank him for that presentation.
Yes.
And he'll be around too. He'll be around. You don't know where he's going.
I'm here, right? Thank you, Ms. Small.
At this time, I'm going to introduce to you the outreach manager for AAA, Shawnee Dallas. Stokely. I think it's Stokely.
That might be his password. Yeah.
Hey, drop it. Even if smoke's not here, you know you gotta have some things. Did you guys get a lot of information from that presentation?
Certainly. Not that we say.
Huh?
Certainly not that.
I'm glad, I'm glad. Miss Johnson, my boy is cool. Yeah, good. I love it when it's just a plug and play, so. Do you need somebody? Oh, you got. Okay. Okay, right, thank you. How are you? I'm gonna come, so.
So my name's Sean Bennett. I'm the outreach manager for Display Northeast. And part of my job, I actually go into all the communities that we serve. We cover 6 counties in northern New Jersey. And I do lots of different programs. I talk about every traffic safety related topic that you can think of, from when you have little kids, putting them in the car, making sure you're using the car seat correctly, all the way to when you are approaching that age that nobody wants to talk about, when it might be time to give up the car key. So yes. Hello? Oh, I don't like mics, but okay. I thought I was loud enough, but I guess not. So everything from, when your child is in their car seat all the way to when an adult might be looking to give up the keys. So I go to schools, I do a lot of schools, senior centers, libraries, all that good stuff. So one of the things that we've been doing lately at AAA, and I've actually presented this for a couple years now over at the high school, is a program called Shifting Gears. And it's the blunt truth about marijuana and driving. Okay. This program is designed to help new drivers understand that they cannot drive under the influence of cannabis. I don't know why all of law enforcement left the room when I started talking about cannabis, but they just disappeared. So the purpose of this program is to just explain to people how marijuana can impact your brain's ability to process information, your visual perception, all that good stuff, and how it is not safe to drive on it. So we have legalized it for recreational use in New Jersey. We are seeing a lot more people using it. In fact, this afternoon I was in Morristown and I was walking down the street and I just got an overwhelming smell of it. And can you clarify for me? I'm not allowed to sit on a park bench and smoke weed, right? Right? Like I'm not allowed to sit on a park bench in the open and smoke, so what? Okay. Okay, I didn't think so. So when I walked past the guy that was sitting on the bench in the park in Morristown, he shouldn't have been there. Okay. Awesome, awesome. So the program goals here, what we do is we just kind of address the facts on impaired driving. I'm not telling anybody, especially I do this program for young children or for high school students. So I say to them, I'm like, listen, live your life, do what you're gonna do. Just don't get behind the wheel after you've consumed cannabis, right? We talk about how it affects your cognition, that's your brain processing information, your ability to pay attention, your ability to make good decisions and avoid risk. And driving is fraught with risk, okay? We talk about tracking, making sure you know where your vehicle is and other vehicles are on the road, who you're sharing the road with, how it affects your reaction time, and how it affects your coordination. We also touch on the similarities and differences between cannabis and alcohol. We talk about a little bit about impaired driving, and then we're going to talk about planning ahead. Okay. All right, so the public perception is that cannabis is less dangerous than alcohol. There are people that think that, we talk a lot about alcohol. We have, drive sober, get pulled over. Buzz driving is drunk driving. All of these are campaigns that law enforcement uses to make sure drivers know that they can't drive under the influence of alcohol. My question is, have any of you ever heard of drive high, get a DUI? Have you heard of if you feel different, you drive different? Okay. What about, I don't know if you were driving the highways this Christmas, but only Rudolph should drive lit? No? Okay, this is why we do this program, because nobody said yes when I talked about the drug impaired driving campaigns. So we've talked a lot about alcohol. We know that we're not supposed to drive under the influence of alcohol. With cannabis newly legal, people have this misconception that it's okay, that it's not as bad as alcohol. And my personal favorite is it makes me a better driver. It doesn't make you a better driver. It's going to affect all of the abilities you need to drive safely, okay? So we need to make cannabis have that same negative stigma that alcohol has. Right. I will play this because I think it's funny, because kids get the bad rap, young people get a bad rap. But when I do this program in the high schools, I do tell them, I said, don't think about this as only now. Think about this as when you're older, possibly when you have your own kids, or parents might need to, we have to have older people understand that it affects them too. So in this, hopefully we can play it. Let's see.
Dad, can we talk? Weed's a thing now, and a lot of people smoke it. So I have to ask, is there gonna be any at this party?
I don't know. Maybe.
No judgments, just if you're gonna try it, just don't drive. Text me, I'll come get you. Mom, this applies to you too.
Okay, I will tell you that does apply because my mom had to call me to have her drive her home. Okay, so don't think about, I'm young, I need to have my parents. You know what? You might need to have your kids or your grandkids or somebody that you know come pick you up. If you are too impaired to drive, you're too impaired to drive. And if you have to think, am I okay to drive? You're not okay to drive. Okay? All right, so the problem with impaired driving, so 2022, I know these numbers are gonna sound old, but honestly, they're always a couple years behind with the data. But approximately 56, so more than half of drivers that were involved in fatal or serious injury crashes tested positive for at least one drug, okay? 20 of them tested positive for 2 or more. That's what we call polydrug use, okay? In the seriously fatally injured drivers, the most prevalent category was that cannabinoids or that active THC, then alcohol. So we see more people are using cannabis than they are alcohol. I do have an updated number. 2022 was 42,795 people died in vehicle crashes. We're still seeing numbers that are too high. We're seeing it was 43,000. 43,000 people that have lost their lives in crashes on America's roads, okay? In New Jersey in 2022, there were 689 fatalities. All right. And in 2021, there were 697. So we saw it come down a little bit, but not enough. And in both of those, you saw that more than almost a third were related to impaired driving. Okay. So what are the different types of cannabis? People don't know that, but there are different strains. Different strains can operate as different drugs. So sativa, this is going to be your more invigorating effect. This is going to be the one that kind of gives you that stimulant feeling. And then you also have the indica, which is going to be the more relaxed kind. This is the one most people think of when you get the munchies or you're relaxed and you're just kind of zoned out. Okay. That one's going to have a higher ratio of CBD, but the thing that they both have in common is that they have THC in them. Anybody know what THC is? Just wild guess. Anybody? No? Okay. So THC is the active ingredient in marijuana or in cannabis that gets you high. Okay. And it stands for tetrahydrocannabinol. That is really what's giving you that high, what's giving you the psychological effect. Specifically with this presentation, we are talking about Delta 9 tetrahydrocannabinol, even though there are Delta 8, there's different synthetic types. We're specifically talking about Delta 9 here. So this is also not your grandma, not your mom, not the weed from days of yore. So back then, THC concentration in cannabis was probably around 3 or 4%. But now we have different ways of consuming it. We can smoke it, we can vape it, we can use the oil, we can eat it. In these situations, you're seeing something that could be as much as 98% THC. So almost pure THC. Think about how that's reacting with your body. I was reorganizing my slides while I was sitting there, so they're a little out of order, but that's okay. So when you talk about alcohol and you talk about cannabis, alcohol is water soluble. It is evenly distributed throughout our bodies, and it is how law enforcement can also tell that we're impaired, right? What's the legal limit for alcohol? What do you think? What's the legal limit for alcohol? Need a 0 in front of that, yes. 0.08. So when alcohol enters our body, it mixes with our blood, it moves throughout our bloodstream. When it's eliminated, when we sober up, essentially, it's out of our system completely. So cannabis is, THC is fat soluble. So very similarly, when you first consume it, it is going to show up in your blood. So if someone does a blood test on you and there's THC in it, it means you are actively high. We call that active THC. Then once it moves out of our bloodstream and we sober up, it actually doesn't leave our bodies completely. It sticks around for a while in our fatty tissues, and we call that inactive THC. Inactive THC can stay in your system for like 30 days, okay? Inactive THC is not impairing you to drive a vehicle. Active THC, when it is affecting your brain, is impairing you to drive a vehicle, okay? I'll gloss over this, but basically we have something in our brains called the endocannabinoid system. And the endocannabinoid system is gonna control our mood, our memory, our motivation. Our brain makes a chemical very similar to THC. It's called anandamide, and it has a similar molecular structure, say that 10 times fast. And so this synthetic version of anandamide, this THC, is gonna disrupt our brain's regular function, okay? It's gonna impair our brain's ability to give us the proper amounts of anandamide, and it's gonna cause trouble with our memory, our mood, our lack of motivation. It's gonna make us not be able to perceive things as well as we would when we were sober. So THC will affect your cognition, executive function. This is things like your ability to plan, your ability to set goals, your ability to problem solve, to organize, to go about your daily activities. So THC is going to affect this, okay, in a negative way. And the THC has strong psychoactive effects. These are really going to affect that executive function and make it unable for you to organize, to plan, to do all these sort of things. It's also going to make it harder for us to understand time and distance, how far we are away from something, how close we are to something, how fast we're going, how slow we're going. And it's going to make it harder for us to process sensory information. So when you're driving, I also do a defensive driving class. When you're driving, I say driving requires 3 things. It requires you to, number 1, pay attention, perceive that something needs your attention. Once you've seen that, or once you've noticed it, your brain has to actually process what you're seeing and make a decision. So if, let's say you're driving and you see someone crossing the street, you can just see someone standing on the side of the street, but your brain has to actually process that they're crossing, tell you need to stop or slow down, and then you actually need to act on that decision. And as we get older, each of those steps takes longer, but if we're impaired, each of those steps also takes longer. Okay. And if we miss seeing something, we're not going to react in time. So ultimately, cannabis is going to affect your reaction time. And it also makes it harder for us to pay attention, right? And harder for us to process the bigger picture. So when you're driving and you're completely unimpaired, you're sober, you are looking through your entire windshield, your rear view mirror, your side mirrors, you're really taking in the larger driving environment. But what happens when you're under the influence of cannabis is that you are going to hyper focus on the area that's right in front of your car. Okay, so where this driver here, oh, it's not going to work on this top driver, this person's going to see this traffic light. Because I don't know if you know this, but when you're driving, you should always be looking further ahead. Your eyes have always got to be moving when you're driving. You got to look ahead, you got to look right in front of you, behind you, around you. This driver is going to see things and be able to plan for them and be able to execute on their decision long before this driver. So this driver on the bottom, oh yeah, they'll see that light turned red, but not until they're right up on it. Whereas this driver up top was able to see that light turn yellow, decide I need to stop, and then actually stop. Okay, so this driver may hit the brakes at the last minute, may go through the intersection, whatever. And what makes this program unique that we're doing is that we've done research. So in Washington State, if you are fatally injured in a traffic crash, they can legally draw your blood to determine if you were under the influence of anything at the time of the crash. Both alcohol and drugs are going to show up in your blood. So in Washington State, which legalized cannabis for recreational use back in 2012, AAA Foundation did a study. They looked at some crash data from pre-legalization, and then they looked at crash data post-legalization. And what they found is that once the state legalized cannabis for recreational use, the proportion of fatally injured drivers who recently consumed THC doubled. What does this not telling us? We're not saying it caused the crash. We are not saying that there are more crashes. They compared apples to apples. So they looked at just the drivers that were killed in crashes, a specific number. How many of those drivers had active THC in their system? Then they looked post legalization and they said, okay, we're going to take that same number of drivers, right? We're looking at that same number of drivers that were killed. Now, how many of them have active THC in their system? So let's say in the first set, it was 20 out of every, 100 drivers. Post legalization, it was now every 40. It was 40 out of every 100. So we see that more people probably had access to it, right? And were using it. And we also know, whoops, sorry, I hope I didn't blind you, that our crash risk doubles when we are under the influence of cannabis. Okay, it makes it much harder for us to drive safely, and it's not something we should look to do. Okay, I was just gonna say something and I forgot what it was. This is actually actual crash data, actual crash footage as well. That's an image of a crash. Same. All right, so how do you tell a marijuana impaired driver or cannabis impaired driver versus an alcohol impaired driver? It's very difficult because they are going to do a lot of things the same. So we have these categorized under alcohol impaired and marijuana impaired, even though a cannabis impaired driver will display a longer reaction time, erratic steering, they'll tailgate more. We'll see that a driver impaired by alcohol may drive too slow or too fast for the conditions, or they'll drive slow and fast inconsistently because they can't regulate their driving. Okay, so just because it's alcohol versus cannabis, it's still bad. It's still going to show up in your driving. Anytime you're impaired, think about it. Anytime you're impaired, alcohol, cannabis, upset, using a cell phone, all of these, I love this. These are all things that you can do if you're driving and on your cell phone at the same time. Okay, so it's not just alcohol and cannabis. And cannabis is going to affect everybody differently because it is a complex drug. There's different strains, but some of the most common characteristics are going to be that drowsiness, the elevated blood pressure, the increased heart rate, the altered time and space perception, eyelid tremors, dilated pupils, and bloodshot eyes. Ever heard of anybody saying, I can act sober? Yeah, they do. Well, I'll tell you what, there's 3 things up here that you will never be able to act sober, and it's your eyes. Correct me if I'm wrong, and no one has corrected me yet. Law enforcement will be able to tell that you are impaired by looking at your eyes long before you ever even open your mouth. Is that right? Yep. So we also talk about, I mentioned earlier, poly drug use. So when people use cannabis and alcohol or alcohol and other drugs, they're not going to have the same reaction as they would if they had just alcohol or just cannabis. So we call that synergism. So when it comes to poly drug use, these people are not having just the high that you would get with cannabis or just the high that you would get with alcohol. They're actually on some whole other plane that, again, very, very, very unsafe to drive. And then how do law enforcement recognize these drivers, or how do they determine these drivers? How do they get them off the roads? So when it comes to alcohol, they will use obviously a breathalyzer is first and foremost. That can give you the accurate amount of impairment. So let's say the limit is 0.08. They can do a breathalyzer or an alco test, and they can tell you that you are 0.06, 0.04, 0.0 whatever. The other way of doing that, if the breathalyzer is not available, is all about how you're driving. Okay, it's your ability to drive. So they will do standard field sobriety tests. These are designed to test your reaction time, your ability to follow directions, your balance, your coordination, all of that. Those are the two customary methods of testing for alcohol impairment. And we don't yet have a way to accurately detect cannabis use at the roadside. However, there are police officers that are specially trained in drug identification, and they call them drug recognition experts, or DREs. Do you have any DREs? Do you have any DREs you don't? Okay. So I will say not every department has them, but they're usually like a county call out. But also New Jersey has, at least they've always traditionally had the second highest number of DREs in the country behind a state like California. So think about that. We have a lot of these guys on the street. So a lot of people will say, kids will say, especially when I do this in high schools, they'll be like, well, I can't get caught because there's no test for it. I said, oh, no. Yes, there is. You have a drug recognition expert. They can come to the scene, they can evaluate you, and they can objectively identify exactly which category of drug you're on. So there are 7 different categories. And now that I'm on the spot, because I'm in the room with law enforcement, I'm going to mess them up. But it's stimulants, depressants, narcotics, inhalants, hallucinogens, cannabis, and oh, there's one more. What is it? Help me out. Okay, wait. I got to do them in order. Stimulant, depressant, hallucinogen. Oh, dissociative drugs. So those that like take you away from reality. So dissociative drug. Now, cannabis can be all 3. So cannabis is its own category. All right. Cannabis can be a depressant. That's that indica. Okay. It can be a stimulant. That's the sativa. And hallucinogens are some hybrid strains of cannabis. Okay. And then how are we going to get around? So there's a really simple thing to think of. If you're going to consume cannabis, don't drive. If you're going to drive, don't consume cannabis. I say the same thing with alcohol. If you're going to drink, don't drive. If you're going to drive, don't drink. However, some people don't believe that. So instead, what we want to do is when we first start out our night, when we first get ready to go out, we want to make sure we have a what? What do you think? What do you think is a good thing to have? A designated driver. Awesome. Does everybody think that a designated driver is the end all to be all? Think your designated driver might become undesignated? Maybe? What happened? Oh, okay. It happened to my friend as well. She went out. She had a designated driver. Unbeknownst to her, her designated driver was doing something naughty on the side and still drove her home. And instead of getting her home safely, wrapped her car around a tree. Okay? So first things first, when you get ready to go out, have a designated driver. Go, have your fun, do what you're going to do. When it's time to go home, review the plan. Make sure your designated driver is still designated. And if not, you have to think about how else you can get home, because it is not worth the risk to you or anyone else to get behind the wheel impaired. There's no such thing as, I'm only a little bit impaired. Impaired is impaired, okay? So you're going to plan ahead. If you come to realize that your plan isn't working, you're gonna figure out who should be driving, all right? So we have something great. It's called Uber and Lyft. Call Uber, call Lyft, call someone you trust. So in the very first slide, I told you that my mom has had to call me. So I asked her, now this is going back several years, and I didn't actually work at AAA at the time, but I used to work in the city and I took the train. And if I ever missed the train, took the train to South Orange. If I ever missed the train, I would call her and tell her to come pick me up at Newark Broad Street. Nope, Newark Penn Station, and drive me to South Orange. So one day I said, Mom, I missed the train. You got to come get me. So she had gone out with her buddies. They were golfing. And after golf, they went to their favorite Portuguese restaurant. So she shows up to pick me up and she goes, I can't drive. Now, okay, she got there. We're not gonna say anything about that. But she recognized that she was not in any condition to drive. So I said, Mama, what did you do? It's like 8 o'clock at night. She's like, oh, well, we went to Rita Manavela after golf and they were all drinking sangria. I didn't drink the sangria, I just ate the fruit. Mom, that's worse. Okay, so I've had to take her home. I've had to drive her home. And then this past holiday season, she was at a party. Her friend got so drunk, her daughter, who was home from college, had to come pick her up. Okay, so it's not just young people needing older drivers, it's all of us. We got to lean on each other. Always have someone in your corner that will come and get you when if you need them. If it's available, public transportation. If you realize that when the night starts and your friend is like, oh my God, I had the worst day at work, they're probably not going to stay designated. So maybe at that point you can decide, I'll be the sober one. Go ahead. I'll make sure we get home safely. And then if possible, if it's a safe area, if you feel comfortable, stay where you are. Okay? Just wait. Nothing is going to sober you up, cannabis or alcohol, nothing is going to sober you up but time.